Now the AGM we'll start with the minutes of the 2021 meeting, and you'll have received copies of that, and they were available outside in the hall as well, and there were the minutes of the meeting were in the Survivor magazine. Then there will be the Chair's report, followed by the Company Secretary's report, the Treasurer's report, and after the three reports we will have the 4 resolutions that apply to the AGM, and then we will have any other business, and then after that we will go towards the second presentation of the day. Thank you. Yeah. Now the minutes. So we take it that the minutes have been read, and we'll move now that you all have read them, either this morning or before you arrived. And I now ask, are there any matters arising out of the minutes? No. Well, could I have a proposer? I was going to take all of that afterwards. We'll take all of that at the end. Sorry, I'll do the proposals at the end. I think it'll be simpler. We'll just get through with we'll do the presentations first and then do the proposals on the resolutions. Of the minutes, you want minutes? Sorry, yeah, okay. I'll do the proposal of the seconder. Sorry about that. Of the minutes of the meeting. So could I have a proposer for the minutes, please? All right, Anne Shanahan propose, and could I have another member please second them? Terry. Thank you, Terry. And now any matters arising from the minutes? Okay, thank you. Now, I'll just talk about some of the highlights for 2021. On the finances side, we had a surplus of just over €13,000, and that was steady as it goes. The board is happy to say that we can continue as we are with the current under the restrictions on the current finances that we have at the moment, that it's okay to go ahead. The Treasurer will give you a full report on the finances, so I'm not going to elaborate on them here now. We developed a new fundraising strategy over the past year or so to add on to the existing strategy that we had. And this strategy is more to make contact with large donors, large companies that would be able to give us significant donations. As you know, it's very difficult now to do a lot of small functions to gather money. So we're hoping that from the members that maybe some of you know people, maybe you have relatives who work in a large corporate company, or you have no friends who have connections in these areas that we could actually use to approach to gather donations. Both companies now, it's well established in America, and it's becoming established here in Ireland for social corporate governance, social corporate support. So this is a program that companies can be asked to contribute to us for. So if any of you have contacts that you think we could follow up as regards donations, would you please talk to Fran, a member of the staff, or any board members with contact names and details, and then we will follow it up with you more individually and with the firms involved, and we'd appreciate any of that. And of course, we can all do our own little bit, as I've said in other years as Treasurer. Legacies, maybe you would consider. Most people leave some donations in their wills to a charity, and we would ask you to consider polio survivors, which is as you know, very close to all our hearts. Now, last year, moving on then to services, I think the girls gave a very good explanation of all the work that they've done in 2021, and 303 people were directly sought help from the office, which was good. Now, we have recruited a new member, membership and volunteer recruiter. Mags Lovett was appointed in 2021, and some of you will have heard from her as well on her. She has contacted a lot of people, but of course it's very difficult to get around to all the groups during COVID. Our fundraising plan focused on targeting large companies, as I said, for ongoing major donations, and we need to harness your contacts and connections for our members. So again, as I said before, do we have family members or friends working for big companies? And maybe you could give us details and help us with that work. Then is there a family member or a friend who can also help us get the donation from these companies? That would be absolutely marvellous way of doing things. Thank you. Now, COVID-19, we want to encourage members to meet again safely. Social support meetings and group meetings, and listening to Professor Roseanne this morning, she emphasised how beneficial social contact is. So our meetings are very important. These social meetings are very important, and we ask you to resume them again as soon as possible, but to do so safely. And if you're happy, maybe it might be an idea to wear masks, and remember social distancing and hand washing, hand sanitisation, and ever. COVID hasn't gone away, it's not going away, and there seems to be a bit of a surge coming on now at the moment. So it is, and of course we all know the value of vaccination, so I assume everybody has the 4 doses by now. And if not, I encourage you to get that one as soon as possible. However, don't attend social functions at any time if you have a bit of a sniffle, or you feel uncomfortable, or if it's too risky for your health. And in those cases then, where there are people not living anywhere near a social group, or who can't attend for physical reasons, we will provide online meetings for those, and online meetings can be very enjoyable, especially if it's 4, 5, 6 or 7 people. You can have your own little celebrations, and I know other groups that have done that, and in fact they've done it in offices too, that on a Friday night they've had a social, during COVID, they've had a Zoom social evening where each person in their own homes or in their flats or whatever had a glass of wine or a beer or whatever, and had a chat for an hour or two. So it's been done, and we'd like to encourage our members to socialise. After all, it's going to make us healthier, and we're all going to live longer if we do it. Now, other developments in 2021, the governance code. This was a mammoth task all round to comply with the charities regulator, and it has taken us a number of years to cover as best we can all the implementation of the regulator's code. Huge task, 99 policies and procedures. So that is some work that has been done by the board and by the staff, and I wish to thank them, take the opportunity now to thank them for the hard work. And as a result, we have been able to tell the charity regulator that we consider ourselves compliant. Of course, compliance is an ongoing thing. Paper never refuses ink, so we have to make sure that we are keeping those policies active and working. Now, Dormant Members Project. This was a very good project that took place. We looked over the number of members that hadn't been in contact with the office for a number of years. So we were able to contact 150 members who hadn't been in touch for us for a long time. And this was now a very worthwhile thing to do. Then we have telephone support service. 10 new leaders were recruited last year. That's marvellous. And I take this opportunity now to thank those 10 volunteers who have a purpose, as outlined this morning, and working there with on the recruiting leadership support. Then polio survivors, thank you. Polio Survivors and Us. The book has been updated. It's been very nicely updated, the artwork on it, republished, and it's on sale today down there at the back of the hall. And it's €10. And it's a very interesting book, and it's part of our history. So you can buy the book and enjoy it for yourselves, and then pass it on to somebody else. That would be my suggestion, so that it's spread around. And maybe in your local library, you could ask them, is the book there? And libraries are excellent places for, once you ask for a book, they usually go and order it. So this would promote the story of polio survivors throughout the country if that book is available in all the libraries. So I encourage you to go to the libraries and ask them for it, to bring it in. And then, of course, when they tell you it's there, take it out for a week or so, even if you have got one at home, and then leave it back for recirculation. Now, our strategic plan, the progress on our strategic plan, this is the current one, the one that we've been doing for the last 5 years. The first priority was to provide a range of services and supports to assist polio survivors maintain independence, reduce social exclusion, and enhance quality of life. So 303 people sought help from the office during the year. 68 members received aids and appliances, 41 members benefited from therapies, and 242 members received the winter heating grant. Strategy priority number 2, to inform, educate and assist polio survivors in accessing services, supports, care and benefits. The Polio Register regional advertising campaign has concluded. The Register promoted in GP surgeries through advertising on digital screens in waiting rooms where they have them, because now in the doctor surgeries they don't hold leaflets any longer. Total of 412 polio survivors signed the registry by the end of 2021, and they all receive regular updates on the work of the organisation. Strategy priority number 3, to advocate for improved services, supports, medical care and social welfare benefits for polio survivors. Now, we helped the Justice of Polio Survivors campaign secure free legal support, and that's an ongoing process at the moment. The CEO participated in a national forum to discuss relationships between the HSE and voluntary organisations. And this is another very important initiative, because at times it's quite difficult for the charitable voluntary organisations and the CEO and the HSE to have a common purpose. Then lack of funding and restrictions due to COVID prevented us from making more progress in this area. So fundraising is one of the areas that we would put fundraising towards, because it's so important to be able to advocate and to promote polio survivors and educate people outside of the polio family as to what polio is all about. And so this is where a lot of the money would go once we have funds to do it. Strategic priority 4, develop the organisation, board and staffing to implement this plan and achieve its objectives. 21 new members were recruited during 2021. 2 new board directors were elected. New member and volunteer recruitment officer Mags Lovett was recruited, and 5 new active members were recruited in the year. And strategic priority number 5, to seek increased new funding and develop a realistic funding strategy. And so we have finalised that strategy, as I have spoken to you, outlined before, and implementation has started with lists of company to be approached or drawn up, and we hope that you here today will be able to add to that list for us. Now, board developments during the past year. Pat McGillion is stepping down as a board director. Now, the board and I would like to thank Pat for his many years of tremendous service. Pat, show yourself here, many years of tremendous service. But I'd like to assure you that Pat has not gone away and is not gone away at all. And he is now very active on the European Polio Union Board as well. So he is continuing, he's motivated to continue. He has a purpose in continuing working with everything to do with polio. Now, unfortunately, no new candidates came forward for election to the board this year. Now, I regard that as quite a tragedy. Polio survivors has always been polio survivors for polio survivors. And that seems to be slipping a little bit at the moment, perhaps because of COVID. I'll blame COVID for it. But at the moment now, there are 8 places on the board for polio members. And there are 5 places on the board, this is now according to our constitution, there are 8 places in the constitution for polio survivors. And there are 5 places then for nominated directors, people who we ask to come in that have specific expertise that's going to help, that helps the company, helps the organisation. And if you're not there to have your say on the board, that's a big loss to Polio Survivors Ireland. Professor Roseanne Kelly talked about purpose. If there's anybody here who's looking for purpose in their lives, Polio Survivors is it. And I ask you to put your names forward, either not to go, if to go on the board for next year, or maybe during the year to join one of the committees, which will give you an insight as to whether you'd like to go forward onto the board or not. So all interests can be given to Fran, to any board member here, or to ring the office afterwards and say, well, I'd like to think of going on maybe a committee and getting a toe in the water, and maybe I'd go forward again. So I do look forward to some polio survivors coming forward now and presenting. Some of us too as well, we got polio in the 40s. So we're on the departure lounge, as Pat called it. So I'm talking to the ones in the 50s as well. Those of you who got polio in the 50s, you're 10 years younger than I am. So come along. You know, I'm looking forward to having you join up. Now, is there any questions in relation to that? Any questions in relation to any feature of the report for the year? Very good then, at that rate, if there aren't any questions, that's fine. Company Secretary's report, and I made one big mistake at the beginning of this. I didn't introduce the board to you. So first and foremost, I would like to introduce the other members of the board. Zaina Salman, my board member. Miriam Kavanagh. Fintan Foy. Charlie Smith. James Dorley. And Pat McGilligan, who has served on the board. Now, unfortunately, Mary Byrne couldn't attend today, though I think she's following us via Zoom, and Frank Mitchell also was unable to attend, and they send their sincere apologies. And now I ask Fintan Foy to give the Company Secretary's report. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to present what is thankfully a brief Company Secretary's report, and it's great to be able to do it in real life rather than on Zoom, as we've had to do over the last couple of years, and it's good to see everybody. Just is to reassure the members that the company and its officers have made all returns required to the regulatory authorities, that the officers and the directors have, as far as we are aware, complied with all necessary statutory provisions as well. Over the last year and since the last meeting, we've held 8 meetings of the board. And in addition to that, there have been 15 meetings of the board subcommittees. There are 4 subcommittees: Service, Quality and Safety, Governance and Compliance, Audit and Finance, and then the Board Nominations Committee. As Macrina has already mentioned, in the last year there was particular focus on the work required to comply with the Charities Regulator Governance Code. And any of us who are involved in organisations will know that this is a huge undertaking. And it was after a considerable amount of work by Fran and his team that we were able to confirm that we had fully implemented the governance code by the deadline of October last year. And again, what involved various committees, most of the heavy lifting was done by Fran and his colleagues in the office. Again, as Macrina has mentioned, there have been no nominations received this year for new elected directors. And in accordance with our constitution, 3 elected directors are standing down this year: Frank Mitchell, who is seeking re-election; Mary Byrne, who is seeking re-election; and then again, Pat McGillion is not seeking re-election. Therefore, as the number of nominations are equal to or less than the number of vacancies in each region, Frank and Mary are deemed elected without the need for a ballot. I think that might deserve a round of applause. Just then, a summary of the breakdown. In the South East, Macrina Clancy has been was re-elected last year, and Mary Byrne is deemed re-elected this year. In Dublin, Zainab Salman was elected last year, and we have a vacancy. There's a further vacancy in both the North East and in the West. In the South, Charlie Smith was re-elected last year, and Frank Mitchell has been deemed re-elected this year. And again, there are a total of 5 elected directors with 3 vacancies. The board nominated director, Elaine Toomey, resigned in 2021. And I think all of us on the board, and indeed I hope the members, are very grateful for the important work that she undertook during her time for the organisation and indeed on the board. Miriam and I have completed our 3-year terms as board nominated directors. The board agreed to appoint us for another 3 years, subject to the approval of the members at this year's AGM, and that will be addressed under Resolution 3A and 3B. James Durley, who was introduced earlier, has another year to serve as a board-nominated director. Since another resolution which will be put forward to you for approval is Resolution 4. Since 2017, elected directors must be elected in 5 regions: Dublin, South East, South, North East and West. And why was that? Well, the intention was to ensure greater regional representation on the board. And I think, as you would, well, hopefully you would agree, as you would have seen from our previous slide, this hasn't worked, with the North East and West never having elected a director. And we have currently 3 elected director vacancies on board. And with such a small board, 3 vacancies it creates all sorts of issues and problems. And we feel that this may actually discourage people seeking election in regions where all the elected director spaces are taken. Therefore, the board is proposing to remove these regions, and all directors will be elected on a national basis, and that will be put forward to you later this afternoon. And that's it. As I said, it was short and brief, and again I would like to thank Fran and his team for the work that they put into running the organisation, and indeed for putting our slides together this afternoon as well. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Yeah.
Can I have a proposer to accept the report, please? Sorry, there's a lady down there, Fran, I don't know her name. Monica. And Robert. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yeah. Now, any questions to Fintan?
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fintan. So, and could I have a seconder and proposer for my own report earlier? This is now to keep everything in order. A proposer, please, to accept my report. Who's that, Jim? Thank you, Pat. And a seconder, please. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Now, Miriam will give the Treasurer's report.
Okay. Thank you, Macrina. Okay, so I'm going to get started. It won't be as brief as Finton's, but I'm hoping it's not going to be so long as to shorten any lifespans, but I can't guarantee it's going to add to your longevity. But if you stick with me, I'm going to take you through some of the key financial highlights from the year. Some of these will be reflected in the financial statements, and some of the slides will have more detail. I think there were copies of these slides available outside, and if you want to have them sent on to you afterwards, then that is available. So looking at some of the key figures first. So our total income is just under 450,000, or was in 2021, and this was a slight increase of about 5% compared to the previous year. And that increase, some of that increase came from a small increase from the HSE, and also there was an increase in the amount of grant funding that we received. We had, as Macrina highlighted in her presentation, a small surplus of 13,000, and the balance in our bank accounts was just over 200,000 euro at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, there were 6 staff members. And those 6 staff members, I think, you know, when we looked at the presentation given to us by Kerry and Ciara, and we think of the amount of work that they actually do, and that Emma is here as well, and you know, the amount of work that these staff do is really good value for money. And I think that's something to bear in mind when we're talking about the money that is being spent by this organisation. So looking at the split out of the income, obviously the HSE is the biggest funder for PSI, but there's 16% of our income comes from fundraising and grant funding. And those income sources are volatile. They are not always very predictable. So we apply for a number of grants, we may not always receive them. And so there is some volatility in our income. However, as Macrina stated, you know, financially we are in a similar position than we were at that we were in the last few years. Financially, things haven't changed drastically. So looking at the total expenditure for the year, so it's 436,000 was spent in the year 2021, and this is a little bit less than in 2020, but a good way to check the kind of financial health of an organisation is to think on the funds that are in a bank account compared to how much is spent in a year. So if you go back to one of the previous slides, we have about 200,000 cash at the end of the year. That would fund less than 6 months of operations if we stop getting all income in. So that's a sense of how long an organisation can continue on. However, we are obviously funded by the HSE predominantly, and that funding is committed each year. So I'm going to focus on these 4 items here, so the services to member and provision of equipment, and have a look at that and how that has changed compared to the previous year. So with these 4 items, the total spend is 257,000. And you can see that there's some slight changes from 2020 is the orange colour, and blue there is 2021. So there's been an increase in the support staff, and that's because of the recruitment of the additional staff member, and also there's been some small wage increases during the year. And so this is the the total cost for this, and I'm going to have a look now at the services to members and split that out, and so we can get a sense of how much has been spent on the services to members during the year. So obviously the heating grant is the biggest part of this figure of 30,000. The smallest one here is social support of €700, and that's obviously still related to COVID and the lack of the availability and the ability to put on social functions and social gatherings. And so hopefully when we're here in 12 months' time, this figure will be higher. When we add in then the provision of equipment along with the other items, we can see that that's far in excess. So 84,000 is spent on the provision of equipment. And Ciara and Kerry went through, and particularly Kerry spoke about how crucial some of those pieces of equipment can be for members to continue to live their lives and to continue to be involved in what they enjoy doing. And so it's a very important part of what the organisation does. So you can see it's a significant payment in 2021. Some of the organisation costs that were funded during the year, we can see committee costs and board costs are obviously quite low because we met virtually during the year, so we didn't have any in-person meetings during the year. Again, in 2022, we expect that will change, that we anticipate having a number of in-person meetings and to try and kind of build back to seeing everybody's faces again as a board and as committees. We're still very focused on the promotion and education costs and promoting Polio Survivors Ireland and publishing information about that. Administration costs are 179,000, and it's broken down there, as you can see on the table. The vast majority of it is the administration staff costs, so 72% of it. And 23% is a catch-all term of general administration costs that I'm going to just split out here now. We also have 5% of fundraising expenses, and that totals to just under €10,000 during the year was spent on fundraising. That's an increase compared to the previous year, and that reflects the change in the fundraising strategy as outlined by Macrina earlier. So there's a shift in focus for the organisation, whereas it was very heavily focused on the promotion and on increasing the members signing up to the register. And there was a shift and a decision to move to trying to implement a new fundraising strategy. So these fundraising expenses included bringing professionals in to develop a fundraising strategy for us. And we're hoping that this will lead to the generation of additional income for the organisation. So general administration costs then here are just over 40,000. Obviously, the office rent, insurance, and powering it is the largest component to this. But there are other considerations, and these are things that we just have to pay for. Many of these are similar to those that were paid out in the previous year. And on the final slide here is the income and expenditure trends over the last few years. So you can see there has been a trend of our income dropping, and expenditure obviously has to drop in relation to that. We've had a slight uplift in income in 2021. As I said, that's due to an increase in some of the grants that we received and a small increase from the HSE. But as I said at the start, some of our income, it's not predictable. And this is really why we're trying to consider and implement a new fundraising strategy and trying to encourage corporate donations to continue the really good work of this organisation. And I think just finally what I would like to say, to reiterate what Macrina spoke about, you know, having people maybe from this room or who are on Zoom to consider joining the board, or to consider joining any of the committees. I mean, the committee that I would be on is the Finance and Audit Committee. We would very much welcome having additional members being on this committee. And as somebody who's not a polio survivor, but who is on the board and is on a committee, there is nothing to replicate the lived experience of people who are polio survivors being involved in the making decisions of this organisation. It's something we always want to hear, and there's no better way to have that voice heard than to have members on the board and on the committees. So I would ask you to consider that today and in the future. So those are the figures that I'm looking to bring to you today. If anybody has any questions, I can take them now. No? Okay. Okay, you're obviously all thinking about whether to join the board or not, so that's fine. But if there's any more questions, if you think of something, and you can contact the office and they will help you with that. Thank you very much.
Now, may I have a proposer for the accounts, gentleman down there at the back? May I have your name, please, sir? Hugh. Yeah, thank you. And may I have a seconder, please?
Monica.
Thank you, Monica. Now, where do we go? Are these the Yeah. They don't need they need the cards for the resolutions. No. Now we will take we have two resolutions. Resolution number 1 is to approve the accounts. Haven't they accepted that? Oh, the chairperson has it. So we do the 3 of these.
No, it's just a proposal and second.
So could I have a proposer and a proposer for the accounts, please? To accept the accounts. Thank you. It's the lady beside Monica. Your name? Alice. Thank you, Alice. And may I have a seconder, please, for the accounts? Joyce. Yeah. Thank you, Joyce. Now, we propose to appoint our existing auditors, Nolan and Associates. So could I have, the board recommends that we do continue on with them for another year. So could I have a proposer, please, to accept Nolan and that's over here, Pat. Thank you, Pat. And could I have a seconder, please, for the accountants and lovely Sue Dowling. Susan Dowling.
Susan.
Yeah, Susan Dowling. Yeah. Okay, so now we have to have a vote for the approval of the accounts, and following that we'll have a vote for the appointment of the auditors from the red. We've had a proposer and a seconder. So you've got 3 cards. The green card is a yes, the blue card is abstaining, and the red card is a no. So to approve the 2021 accounts, would you please show your cards? Up in the air. Would everybody show a card for the approval of the accounts? Yeah, who's counting? Please keep your hands up for a moment longer. Thank you. Mostly green. I think we'll do it the others. We've got a few blues and no reds. Yeah. No no's. Okay, thank you. I'll do it. Pardon?
Should we collect them?
restate the colours?
You'd like to take the cards up, do you?
No, just say again the colours.
The colours. I'll just say green to accept. Green is yes. So could we just have the green cards now for the moment? This will help the counting. Thank you. No, well, there are a few blue cards, green cards. Well, wait a minute, I'll do blue in a minute. I'll do blue in a minute. If they weren't happy about it. Now, any blue cards, that's anybody abstaining, not voting? Is there anybody not voting? Would you put up your blue cards, please? There are no blue cards. No blue cards. And anybody against the accounts be ratified, the pink card or the red card. And there are no pink cards. So they've been carried unanimously. Yeah, it's passed. Okay, we'll leave that up. Now will I do the auditors ones now? Mm-hmm. If they'd let us know when they're ready for us to go ahead with the next one. And with those people who are online, could you raise your hands, those on Zoom, could you raise your hands for the yes vote, yes, that you accept the accounts? Those online, raise your hands to accept the accounts. Anyone online abstaining from voting? Anyone online rejecting the accounts? Thank you. Thank you. So now, will I move? Yeah. That's the total, is it? That works out at 191 in total, including proxy votes, those present and those online, 191 in favour. And there was one abstention and none against on that. So now we move on to the appointment, approval for the appointment of the auditors, Nolan and Associates. So I'd ask those who are in agreement that we appoint Nolan. We've had a proposer and a seconder. Now could I have a show of the green cards for those who want us to accept Nolan and Associates as our auditors? Yeah. Now, if there's anybody abstaining from a voting, would you please raise the blue card? There are no blue cards. Anybody against accepting against appointing Nolan and Associates as our auditors, external auditors? No red cards. Thank you. Now, those online via Zoom, please raise your hand if you approve of the appointment of Nolan and Associates. If you want to abstain from the vote, please raise your hand. And with those online, anybody against appointing Nolan and Associates, please raise your hand. And thank you very much. Now, 188 votes were in favour of it, and there were 3 abstentions and none against. Now, the next resolution is the ratification of the board appointments. First, I will call for the ratification of Fintan Foy as a director of the board. Do I look for green, red and pink cards? Green, the cards, or just voting for cards? So could I have green card, please, for those who wish to reappoint Fintan Foy as a director to the board? Anybody against? Please show the blue card. Nobody against. Anybody abstaining? Sorry, the red card was against. I got mixed up with the cards. No, it was right. Now I'd ask those online in favour of appointing Fintan Foy to the board. Please raise your hand. Anybody online who's abstaining from voting? Anyone online voting against the appointment? No, thank you. Yeah. Nothing else. 188 votes in total have voted to appoint Fintan Foy. So Fintan, back on board, welcome. And now we have the vote for Miriam Kavanagh, please. Those in favour of her appointment, please show your green card. Anyone abstaining, please show blue card. Anyone against the appointment? please show the pink card. No. Online, please, those in favour of the appointment of Miriam Kavanagh to the board, please raise your hand. Anyone online that's against the appointment? And anyone online abstaining? I'm getting mixed up. Right? $187 and 3 abstentions and 2 against. So, Miriam, you're deemed reappointed. Thank you very much. You're on the board. The next thing on it is, pardon, now we come to the Constitution and the amendments in the Constitution that Fintan outlined to you before. Do I need to do all of the 4 of them separately? Take them all together. Yeah. So I need a proposer and a seconder. Basically, it involves a few articles in the Constitution, but they all are correlated, so we'll take it as one vote for the whole thing. And basically, it's, as Fintan has outlined earlier, the board proposed that we remove the regionalities and have appointment that anybody anywhere in the country can put forward and vote for the board, put themselves forward to go on the board, and if the number of people applying exceed the vacancies, then there will be a vote on it. Otherwise, they'll be automatically deemed elected, automatically proposed. So I would like a proposer for the amendment to the Constitution of Articles 2, 10, 11, 12, 14 and 51. Hugh, thank you. And could I have a seconder? That's that gentleman there?
Oh, sorry,
Terry, thank you. And now from the members, could I ask you to read those in favour to put up your green cards again? And there's no trip to America out of it.
online as well.
Those online, if you're in favour, please raise your hands. The green cards, thank you, in favour. Anybody abstaining from the amendments to the Constitution? It's 1 abstention. And is anybody, those who are, if anybody is against, please raise the pink card. Those online, please raise your hands in favour of the amendments to the Constitution. Those online who are abstaining, please raise your hand. And those online who are against the change to the Constitution, please raise your hand. $184 were in favour of it.
9 abstentions.
There were 9 abstentions and 1 against. So the motion is carried. Now that's the hard work done of the AGM. Have anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask in relation to anything that has been going on in the organisation over the past year, or anything at all actually that you'd like to raise or ask a question about? Pardon, what's his name? Yeah. Hugh McHugh.
Fellow member, I'd like to ask the following question, and I would ask Fran, our CEO, who is a direct connection with the Federation of Ireland, Disabled Federation of Ireland. I would ask him through the Federation to make a representation to the revenue on our behalf for a increase in the rebate of the petrol and diesel, please.
Okay, so Hugh, the question is, with the increase in the cost of fuel prices and the cost of living, that the fuel rebate should be increased. Yes. Just to say that you raised it with me last week, and I happened to have an occasion with the Minister, Anne Rabbitte, Minister for Disabilities, to raise that question. And it came up with a number of other cost of living issues for people with disability, such as heating allowances, disability payments and so forth. So she said she would take all of those to Heather Humphreys, but of course that means that's a different minister. So I've asked the DFI if they could see if Heather Humphreys could actually attend the next general meeting of the DFI, which will be in the autumn, prior to the budget. But in the meantime, I'm very happy, if the board is agreeable, that we would also write directly to Heather Humphreys requesting that the fuel rebate be revised upwards in view of the increase in fuel costs.
Thank you very much, Fran.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Fran. Now, are there any other questions that anybody would like to raise? Yes. Yeah, it's coming.
We have just removed the regional board members, so that all board members can come from one region of the country. And what I wish to say is that if we have any members here at the moment from the west of the country which want to become board members, please, please, please become board members, because I can see all the members of this organisation coming from the east of the country, and I've often been told that there's two islands, not the North and South Island, but East and West, which are totally different. So come on, you know, if we've got any from the east, from the west coast at the moment, who want to be board members, please, please, please be board members. Thank you.
And the south of the country to Cork region as well. Any more questions?
It's not so much a question. I would just like to thank very sincerely the editor and those involved in the Survivor magazine, which was wonderful to get, especially during the lockdown. It just kept the link and kept us all together. So I appreciate their efforts very much, and thank you.
Yeah. Yes, that was Emma Clark is mostly responsible for the newsletter. She does a terrific job. Thank you, Emma. Any other questions? Thank you. We can move on then to Kathy White. So now I will.
Sorry, Emma would like to say something.
Sorry.
Okay, there's something from Zoom.
There's a question from Zoom.
it Anne Burns? Anne Burns.
Anne Burns would like to say something.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Anne.
Okay, Maria. Again, I don't have a question, but I just want to thank you all there and your team and the staff for organising the AGM conference, and for those of us on Zoom as well. It's been excellent. It gave you double work, I'm sure, organising both of us to see us all cared for and all that and looked after at the meeting. I'd like to thank you all. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? And then that formally concludes the AGM part of it, and now we will move on to our next speaker.